All right, well, it is 1 o'clock, so let's call it, and we do have a quorum, so let's call this meeting to order. I'll call to order the special meeting of the Board of Directors for the Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority for Friday, November 12th at 1 p.m. And with that, Councilwoman Bayou, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Ivy. All right, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Certainly. Chairman Lucy?
Here.
Mayor Sheevy? Councilwoman Bybee?
Here.
Andy Chapman?
Here.
Shannon Keel?
Here.
Rick Murdoch?
Here.
Ann Silver?
Here.
Jessica Sfraza?
Here.
And Mark Sturbins.
Here.
Madam Clerk, we have a quorum of the board. Let the record reflect Mayor Sheevy, she joins in. All right, Madam Clerk, are there any public comment from the floor this morning?
Yes, there are public comments. Chairman, I have two public comments that came in via email. Mr. Andrew Poulos on the 30th of September and a Mr. Bin Chow on the 30th of September that will be added to the meeting minutes. And other than that, we have in-person public comment. First person is Alan Ton.
Mask on or off? Is it okay, mask off? Okay. Good evening, board. I'm Alan Tom. I'm the executive director for Hot August Nights. And I know you have on your agenda here for E3 for special event funding, but one of the things that I wanted to cover today was to continue to have our funding for special events. You know, we have our legacy group here that's represented. We have the Reno Rodeo, the air races, the street vibrations, and I think the only one that's missing is our balloon races here. But we're just here to ask for support and to continue supporting the special events here. You know, we bring so much millions to the local economy. Just Hot August Nights alone, I know we bring over $90 million in our week here for the local economy. And without the special event funding that we have throughout the RSCVA, you know, we're not able to ever get our event going. You know, we struggled in 2020 when we had COVID. And trying to get some of our other funding back, you know, a lot of the other sponsors that we normally have during our events, you know, they went away. They didn't survive COVID. And for us to continue and to have our legacy group continue as a special event, as our legacy group that has been going on for years and years, all I'm asking is to continue and to have a special place to where we can continue having funding, to keep our events going, and to have a great area where everybody can come to see all our legacy groups. All right, thank you.
Next on the list is Randy Burke.
Burke?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Randy Burke. I represent Road Shows, Street Vibrations. We've been producing our event twice a year in Reno, Carson City, Virginia City, and Lake Tahoe. We've been producing successfully for 28 years. I'm a member of the Legacy Group, and I support continued support from the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority for our special events now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Tony Logatetta.
Hello there. Tony, I'm the COO out at the Reno Air Races. Thanks for giving us this moment today. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't dispel a quick rumor, because I heard one the other day, that we had a bad event and we were in trouble. I want to tell you all that we had a great event, and it was very successful, both from the standpoint of it was safe, that's always number one, and it was also financially successful. And I just want to let everybody know that we are absolutely moving forward to 2022 and beyond. So very excited about that. On that note, one of the ways that we all got there, I know, is through a lot of extra work. There were a lot of challenges. Things are getting more expensive. It's getting harder and harder to find labor. And for us all to have gotten there in 2021 was a huge challenge. So as we start to look at funding for the future for special events, whether it's a brand new event, new to the area, which I can't even imagine trying to do right now, given the experience that we all had this last year, or an event that's been here for 100 years, the special event funding is hugely important. And we really appreciate all the help that this organization has given us. We could not have done this year. We could not have done past years without you. So I thank you very much for that and just ask for continued support. Thanks.
Thank you. And our last public comment is Mr. George Combs.
Thank you for letting me come. I represent Reno Rodeo. I just second what these three gentlemen just said before me. We're here in support of E3 that's on your agenda today. We can't do what we do and it done it as long as we had without the help of the RSCVA. My lines of what I want to mention in my 3 minutes today is a year and a half ago, the RSCVA reached out to the Reno Rodeo and talked to us about the management of the Livestock Event Center. And I think you all have received a letter from us a couple, 3 months ago. And of course, with COVID and everything else got put on hold, and then a change of the CFO and all that. And now, listening, the RSCVA has made their choice that they're not going to renew their contract with ASM. We see that going forward. From the Reno Rodeo standpoint, we're still here. We're still wanting to be a partner. We'll still help. We would still like to manage the facility because we think we can do so much more with it, with the marketing of it and keeping track of the deferred maintenance and trying to get some of this stuff fixed. My concern personally, and then I think my rodeo associations is too, is June's going to be here before we know it. And ASM's going to be gone. What's that going to look like? We're just concerned that we want to make sure our facility is the best it can be come June 1, so we can have our event in 2022, and hopefully it'll be as successful as it was in 2021. Not having a rodeo was like very, very tough for us not to put it on. In 2021, we battled a lot more fight to have the event and to be able to represent the legacy events and be the first event in 2021 of our size to happen grew that the success of all the special events in town and was able to get some kind of normalcy back into the city of Reno. But anyway, just want to let the board know and the RSCVA that we're here, we're willing to help, would love to start up them conversations again about working together to manage this facility and get it back to what it could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That concludes public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I do appreciate it, and I want to thank all the public commenters for coming and sharing their comments with us. All right, we will move on to item C. This is the approval of the agenda for the November 12th, 2021 Special Board of Directors meeting. Are there any changes? I don't have any changes for the agenda at this time, unless there are any other changes that need to be made. I'm looking for a motion to accept the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the agenda as presented.
All right, I have a motion from Councilwoman Bybee. I have a second. From Burke. I'll call for the vote. Seeing no public comment, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all members voting. We are on to item D. This is the approval of the minutes of the September 23rd, 2021 Board of Directors meeting, regular meeting. Is there any emendations that we need to make to the minutes, or are they ready to move forward? For a motion.
Make a motion to approve as is.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second to approve, Ann Silver.
I have a motion from Member Sturbins, second from Member Silver. All those, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. right, that takes us into item E1. This is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing regarding the approval of Resolution 595, adopting a budget augmentation for the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority for fiscal year 2022. Ms. Yeager, your item, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon. Courtney Jaeger, Vice President of Finance. One second, Corey, can you enable me sharing my presentation? It says that's disabled right now.
And Courtney, to get going, Mr. Chairman, if I may, as she gets things set up, I just wanted to start off the agenda item. Obviously, we've been committed to meeting with the Finance Subcommittee each quarter to talk about augmentations when they are appropriate. Thanks to Chairman Lucy for helping to fill out the committee for that subcommittee. The goal, obviously, is to return to pre-COVID levels where we were. That is in regards to both staff and resources. And having that successful summer, Courtney's going to walk us now through that meeting that we had with the subcommittee for the full board approval. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jake, are you able to share your screen now?
Corey's working on that. I just sent her a message. Sorry for the delay. It was working earlier, and now it's not. So let's just give it one more minute. Apologies for the delay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
maybe we could move to maybe the agenda item around. I don't know if special events had a slide, just since we're having technical difficulties, maybe we could move that to the front of the agenda.
Have you been able to solve that, or no?
It's still an issue. IT's working on it. But yeah, let's go ahead and move to the agenda item since that one doesn't have any screen items to share, and I'll continue to work with IT.
Okay, so let's do that. So we'll work with IT and get Ms. Yeager's presentation going. So let's, Member Safraza, we will do that. So let's open up E3. This is special event funding. So this is a request made by a couple of our members, and I put this item together with staff to have a discussion and review a formation of a different or an elevation of our current special events funding in the region in regards to what events may be eligible for that, and have a broader discussion to give some staff direction in regards to what that event funding would look like, or potentially the building of that or the foundation structure would look like. So I will open this up for discussion to the board.
Do we have, Mr. Chair, since I'm the newbie, do we have an allocation amount currently? Can I just get a little history of how much we're giving or have set aside in our budget for special events right now?
Yeah, Members President, right now we currently have $500,000 set aside in fund for special events, with allocations also set aside for marketing and special event marketing. But $500,000 would go through the Special Events Committee that is currently formed of staff members to evaluate all the special events applications and then properly allocate that $500,000. And we've been utilizing, Mr. Harris, can you back me up? I think we've utilized last year 400 some odd thousand of that, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to give you additional background, there's $500,000 that are allocated each year. We've allocated $460,000 to 30 different events that happen throughout the year. That goes through a subcommittee, which is met by the internal staff. One of the things that we've asked about is possibly does that get opened up to the community as we try to make sure that we are transparent and include that. And in speaking with Ben Kennedy, our legal counsel, he said that even if we did that, it would still need to go through with the final decision coming to the president and the CEO. So with that, we are just starting to meet ahead of next year. Tasha Holloway on our team does a tremendous job putting that together and vetting along with the committee to look at both funding existing events, legacy events, as well as considering new events to bring along. And that's kind of where we've been in the 12 months that I've been here.
Mr. Chair, what percentage of the budget, our total overall budget, Charles, goes to special events?
Well, you're talking about if you include all of the facilities and everything else, you're talking about right around a $40 million budget. It's much less when it comes to the sales and the marketing aspects of that. But again, that's an important factor. What I would like to say, Ms. Faraza, is that, moving forward, the special event destination and the community, I want to just keep in mind that we are examining and we are strategizing right now. The goal is that we're going to be finishing a new 3-year strategic plan, of which the special events will be absolutely a part of that. So we recognize that. We know that's important, but we want to make sure that we go through that 3-year process in order to then figure out how we're either going to reallocate or put an emphasis on those events moving forward.
It just seems like a woefully low amount of money considering we have a $40 million budget and we're only allocating $500,000 to special events. So I understand what you're saying, Mr. CEO, as far as the strategic plan. It's just that's the one thing since I've been on this board. And I want to thank all of our partners, special events partners who testified here today. But I think the rodeo, I keep hearing from them about running those facilities. I'm just concerned about waiting until next year to have this discussion in the strategic plan, because I know that's going to take some time to implement. For example, hockey, the new Reno ice facility, I know they've got 700 people in attendance for their game tonight, selling out tickets. So I just think we're at a good opportunity to start looking at these events, funding new ones, and also embracing our partners in this community who've been here a long time with these special events. So I don't know if that's something, I guess, looking for direction from the chairman and you, is if we bring that back to the board for discussion on raising that amount that we contribute to special events, or, having more of an in-depth discussion from our partners who are doing those special events.
Yeah, you make great points, Jessica. And I think part of that is, we're going to see this next month when we meet with the folks that did the survey, which the community participated in and come out. I think we're going to see some of that direction that you're talking about. But we really want to make sure that we give this a thoughtful process, that we do this correctly. And quite honestly, we're moving forward. We know that this is an important part of our community with more than 100 events, a year, and with the legacy events, we know it's important. But I want to make sure that we provide the right process to do that, so that when we come out of this, it has that importance, but yet we're still fulfilling what we need to. And this goes back to what I think Courtney was going to talk about in the augmentation, is we're still not back to 100% where we were pre-COVID. And that deals with both staffing. It also deals with the resources that we have. And I don't mean this in any way targeted towards the special events, but, we've got a lot of staff that are doing things that we're not back at that level. We've got the necessary resources that we need to help target new meetings and conventions. That's all part of that mix. And so what I don't want us to do is I'm hoping the board will be receptive to not rushing ahead to go through that process. And once we get into December and we have that community report and direction, that we will be able to then finalize that strategic plan moving forward. I'm talking with George. I know that June 1st is important to him, That goes into, all the different priorities that we have. And special events is one of several. 3-year strategic plan, conference of mayors, bringing facilities back in-house. That's all in there. And I absolutely know that special events is important to this entire community, as does our staff.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilwoman Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question would be, the agenda item is asking us to look at formation of a fund to provide funding for special events. So my question would be, are we considering a new fund for new special events or adding to ours? Because if we already have it in the budget of $500,000, is it simply augmenting that current fund, or is it looking at a new fund for new events as well as all special events and what types those would be? Because obviously the special events are critically important, but I'm a little confused as if we are looking at, augmentation or a whole new fund. And we do have, I know Courtney's going to give us our update for today's augmentation, but we do also have the federal grant money coming in that we have not allocated. So there are, we've got, and room tax money is increasing. So I think we're in a good fiscal position to consider this, but I'm looking for clarification if we're looking for a whole new separate fund, or are we looking to augmentation of what we're doing right now? Thank you.
Let me take a stab at this. I think one of the initial discussions that we were having where it was one of two options. One, the first option would be to augment the current special event funding and increase the funding level there and allow for it to have a larger pot of money to pull from, utilizing the same platform which we've had all along to fund that. Or two, augment the budget and create a new special event fund that would allow us some, I would say, a little bit more lenient and dynamic movement in the sense of maybe possibly harboring and creating our own events as we would see fit, sponsoring our own events with new event members versus just having event coordinators come and apply for funding. We would be able to sponsor our own and join and jointly work with bringing new events to the area as the board saw fit and creating, so giving us some more dynamic ability. Hopefully that answers the question for you.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think probably my preference would be looking at both an augmentation if we're in the fiscal position, which I'm optimistic we will be, and I love the idea of looking at a more dynamic approach to new events and things that we could be receptive to, that we could bring to the area, whether it's Mardi Gras or Oktoberfest or smaller events that aren't here now. That gives us a little more flexibility. But I think the current the current process seems to be a really good one, because you've got you've been doing that. You have protocol on how events apply and what the criteria are. So I don't think that needs to go away. Do we need to augment it? If we can, yeah, I would agree with that. Thank you.
Just thinking out loud, we're at a real turning point, because a lot of our events, special events that produce room nights, room tax. Without room tax, you don't have money to give to the special events. So all I guess I'm saying is you've got a mechanism. We need new events. We need new blood in this community. We need to extend, for instance, if the air races used to be almost 7 to 10 day event. It's shrunk due to the recession and all the things that have happened. Now the air races is on its way back. How do we go in and come up with an augmentation, not only to their budget, to get into new events or things that they could do to drive, again, visitation and room nights? I really think it's critical that we wait. The longer we wait, or do we go out as Reno and say Reno's open for business? We've got an event fund. We got a mechanism. We'll give you 3 years to get your event up and running. It's in, it can be in the way you write the rules. I think it's critical. We're working with the university for some extended NCAA events. We're looking at new events in the region, whether it's Reno, Sparks. We need the events. It's part of, anyway, again, room night generation, and we got to keep Reno. Reno's a great, it's been known for special events, whether it's a rib cook-off, the Italian festival. You look at these things, and we would love to extend the Italian festival for a week if we could figure out how. But again, I'm saying we need new events. We need new blood in hot August nights. You got to get these events with some help, and we got to extend out the opportunity to make Reno a place to be.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. I do agree. And Mr. Sturman, I'll go to you next. Madam Clerk, will you please let the record show that Mayor Sheeby has now joined us and she's on the phone? Mr. Sturman.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone's kind of saying the same thing. I think the fund is low, and I think we definitely need to push special events. I would like to see us graduate to where that committee becomes more of a Reno Sparks Tahoe special events arm of RSCVA, and it's not a one-time a year approval where it's an ongoing ability to fund events to keep our options available to us and grow, as Rick said, when the opportunities arise. So I think increasing the funding, increasing the options that are available to us and the timing, and I understand to Charles's point, we may not be ready to do that right now, but if we could grow that committee into more of a event section of our organization, and then if we wanted to produce an esports event or do our own bowling event, as Mayor suggested in the past, I think those are all things that would be available to us if we could grow that and get more funding to legacy events and new events and continue to do things similar to how the sales team does when they have a big opportunity. They go out and they are able to fund that at any given time as opposed to once a year. I'm mute still.
Thank you, Mr. Sturman. I appreciate it. Any other comments from any of the board members in regards to Mayor?
Just one more, and I apologize. We have, and I believe board member Chapman serves on it, and maybe you have before. I'm not sure from the RSCVA who else, but maybe it's you, Charles. The RASC fund, and it goes back to I think what board member Sturban. I love that idea because what the RASC fund did, which is the Air Service Fund, is we helped these airlines, but it was during a period of time for them to become sustainable for flights. And I think that's been a good model for the region. And I agree with you, Member Sturban, if we could have this committee so it's not just so they can meet. So if somebody comes forward with an event, we can fund it. And Councilman Bybee, you as well. I think for me, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's also making sure that it's funded. We did get that grant, and I do think we need to raise the funds. And I know, Chairman Lucy, we've talked about just expanding these special events for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bravo. And this is what I would recommend. Mayor and I have served on this board and watched the iteration of it. And I know she took with a very active role with some of the first funding models. Now, the lawyers will probably tell us that, developing a subcommittee, but what I would propose is that in the interim, until we can get to the next budget cycle, that we find a way to augment the budget with grant funding that we have received from the federal government and utilize that to at least bolster that amount to, somewhere around $1 million would be my suggestion at this time. And then to Mr. Harris's point, when we meet for the strategic plan, reworking it and creating an actual full special events committee that can meet, because I agree with Member Safraza, the one-time meeting a year, and Member Sturbans, is that when we meet once a year to, whether it's in the spring or fall, to allocate that funding for these special events, some of those events don't really know what the issues are going to have until maybe, a month closer to their event. So to allocate funding for them and try to put a blanket proposal together in early spring, whereas rodeo may have a better understanding or last minute changes. So it would be better for us to have that ability to be flexible and not a one-time dump of money through a funding committee, but have a actual subcommittee of this board be able to meet, whether it's bi-monthly or quarterly, to allocate funding to special events, whether they're sponsored by the RSCVA or brought to us from outside event coordinators. that would be my suggestion to have a solution to the problem that we're seeing right now, and gives us a little bit of leeway. But that would be my talk or direction to staff.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add one thing here? When we're talking about the funding from the grant and the government funding, we're still working through that. We're not ready to present that to the board as yet. The $2.84 million, which will be targeted towards the facility funding. The $1.25 million that we are going to see from the state of Nevada is geared specifically towards marketing. I anticipate presenting this to the board at the January board meeting, which we can then talk about how much of that would be targeted towards special funding versus room night generation and needs periods, which is what we're looking at over a 2-year period. So we're still finalizing that, working through that, and I would say in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll be able to present that for the board as part of this overall process that you're speaking about.
And Mr. Harris, to your point, I believe that every special event we have is a form of marketing for the region. It markets who we are. They have communication plans for each event. They have broad strokes in regards to membership and people who attend the event. So I believe special events fits nicely inside of marketing, any kind of market spending. I think that was an argument or a point of contention we had when we had the $2 surcharge discussion or the surcharge fee discussion when we raised the surcharge about marketing. And I think special events play a major role in that. I understand the intent of marketing and direct marketing, but I think this ancillary is also plays a major role through almost more grassroots marketing.
And Mr. Chair, you make a great point. What I'll need to do is after this meeting, I'll follow up with Travel Nevada and look for clarification on the funding mechanisms and what needs to be reported back to them and what qualifies. So that'll be on the staff to be able to follow up with the state on that.
Mr. Chair, I think it's important that, as you know, budgets, the word augmentation, and if the 2.84 and the 1.25 are have to be earmarked for certain rules, it means you could, and say one is advertising, you could still go in on your budget now and fix that and take some monies and move it around in that budget to give the extra money to the special events. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just change your budget internally because you've got outside money that you know you're going to get to. But to me, we should be planning to have 3 new major events every year in either any of our cities in our region here. We need it. We eventually, again, everybody's going to come online out of COVID. We've got money, and we should be using it now to get ready for when this thing does open up, because the competition is going to be fierce. Thank you.
Can we make a motion, Mr. Chair? I'd like your direction that we come back to the board, increase the special events funding to $1 million, and then set the policy as Board Member Sturbins has suggested for a new special events committee. I think that's the direction you wanted to go.
And Mayor Sheeby wants to chime in, so I'm going to let her chime in, and then I'll come back to you, Member Safraza, for a motion, if that's okay. Mayor Sheeby.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Really, really great points. I love what Chair Sturbins suggested, because obviously if we have great events all over the region, it's going to lift all boats, right? Like we always say. But so I love that. I love that. And I think to your point, Commissioner, really good points on those are also avenues of marketing and how many visitors come in that, we pull from. One of the things I did want to bring up, because I'd like, some sort of clarification or some way so it's not as fragmented. And I know Chairman Lucy and I have talked about this so many times. We also provide some funding at the city. You guys provide funding at the county. Sparks, I'm sure, has their own, that we kind of, remember we've talked about this funding, how we sort of divvy it up, and then it gets sort of fragmented because that same event might come to the county, it might come to Sparks or whatever to get funding. So I would just like to kind of put it on the radar that there should be some cohesive way to work with the cities and their special events arms as well, and maybe that all kind of rolls into one, or just some capacity so it's not fragmented. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's, we worked so long on this. I think this is just the right time to start moving forward with this.
And if I can respond to the mayor, I would agree with you because I think the more we are regionally cooperating, because obviously Sparks has, our, hometown Christmas. We've got events in Sparks that are Sparks specific, and we have budget for that and things we do regionally as well. So maybe looking at what the 3 jurisdictions already are doing and how working together along with our CVA to kind of make sure we're doing the best for all events, no matter where the jurisdiction, if they're Tahoe or Reno or Sparks or the county, and how we can lift, as you said, lift boats for all of us, because I think working all of us together in the 3 jurisdictions, at least knowing what each other are doing, and then how we can augment that if needed. So I agree with that. Thank you.
So with that being said, I feel that, Mr. Fraza, you had a pretty decent motion. I'll turn it back to you, and then we can adjust that if need be. But realistically, we're not stylized today to make an augmentation, but we can direct staff to bring this back to us at a future board meeting to make that augmentation to the current fiscal year, and then work towards a construct of a new strategic funding or special event funding mechanism. So that would be my hope that we get out of the motion.
Just for clarification, it wouldn't be 2 separate committees, right? It would be one, like the current special events committee would also do the second part that we haven't decided. Okay, I just want to make sure.
And I guess for the local electeds, Councilwoman Bybee and Chairman Lucy and Mayor Sheevy, I think that was a good point you all brought up. Just want to make sure I'm incorporating everything everyone wants in the motion. And I think Councilman Bybee had brought up raising the amount. I do think $1 million, Chairman Lucy, is appropriate. So I'd go ahead and make a motion to direct staff to bring back to double the funding for special events for up to $1 million, and then also talk about the special events committee meeting more frequently, or whatever that structure is. I think we can have that discussion next meeting, or even in January as the CEO suggested. So, but I think right now to get that funding raised is important. So any tweaks, I'm open to them, just trying to incorporate all the comments.
I will second that motion.
Can I just ask one request?
Yes,
that because obviously stronger together. So Councilwoman Bybee makes great points for sure. I would just ask that we have Charles reach out to all the events departments, all our entities, and look at some sort of structure and how we include them.
And I will say, I don't know how the special events committee is set up, but I do think it needs to be fair. So all the jurisdictions are getting funding for the special events. So I think a regional approach on this is appropriate. So,
if I may, for the board for consideration, we do consider every single region, and there is a published requirements that we have for any special events that needs to apply. That's something that's been in place. It's something that we can review. But certainly this is an independent group that is looking as a driver for room nights, to Rick Murdoch's point, that's going to benefit the destination both in room nights and in visitation. And that's something that isn't public on our websites, and we will certainly review that moving forward for the board's backing as well.
One more comment too. New events may not just show up at our door. We may have to use some mechanism in this, what we're talking about, cooperation amongst everybody, to go find these new events ourselves. You know what I mean? And maybe the RSCVA is the catalyst, but we need new opportunity and and again, we can put the money in there, but if we don't have a mechanism, or like you say, we can adjust this to go forward, but we've got to go find these new events. So, or conventions, whatever it is, we've got to, we got to do it. We got to find a mechanism. You just can't put the money there and not have a way to go let people know we're open for business.
And Mr. Murdoch, I think, to further your comment, I agree with you that we have to go and do a little bit more business development. And it shouldn't be just solely specific to, as you pointed out, special events such as outdoor or some sort of event, but it could be even convention space, bringing in convention space and different things like that, and trying to, it should, like I said, it should mirror marketing, but also mirror sales in the sense that we can go and elevate certain conventions with a fund like this. So I think that's part of that strategic plan process that we would be next year to address that kind of formation of the evolution of the special events funding program and what that looks like.
And
Chair Lucy,
Chairman, can
may
I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor Sheehy, and then I'll go to Mr.
Just because, like, some clarification. What about allocating money from the surcharge for special event funding as well? Is there?
There is a provision in the NRS that allows us to do that through the surcharge. The surcharge funding can be used to carry out projects designed to encourage tourism, as well as any projects designated by the board in the strategic plan.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify how we can allocate money from there too. Okay.
Yeah, the tourism surcharge could be a designated funding source for the special events fund.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure though, like, we're not voting on the tourism. Okay. We obviously need to understand the implications that if it does get moved, what goes down in order for special events to go up.
I think the intent of today is just to have the initial discussion,
Okay.
provide some staff direction so that they can bring it back if they need it for a budget augmentation, because it's not we're not agenda budget augmentation, and any kind of strategic plan direction or formation change to funding and structure of the special events process can be brought back. But I want to give staff some insight to what the board's looking for in regards to what that could look like. So that's really what today's intent is.
I will second the motion that was made a while ago.
Okay. A little bit further discussion. I have Mr. Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Lucy. So just a couple of points, and Mr. Murdoch mentioned this. I think it's important for this committee, when they have their discussion, to discuss special events and sponsorships almost in two buckets. They're very similar, but one of them is people coming to us looking for money, and the other side of it, the sponsorship side, is us going after events that we want to bring in here and sponsor those. So I think it's important to distinguish those two buckets and have some conversation around that. And then my last point would be, I would just ask that jurisdictionally or throughout the region, we're also looking at appropriate events that fit within each of our regions, depending on the need periods that are established by the different regions. You know, a special event in Incline is much different than a special event in Reno. So I would just encourage having that conversation as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and Board Member Chapman, I'm sorry, I would be remiss not to say that obviously Tahoe's included in that special events funding, so the whole region.
Yes, thank you.
So I've got a motion and a second from Ms. Keel to a motion from Ms. Member Safrata, a motion and a second from Ms. Keel to move forward with augmentation and some new foundation with a strategic plan of special events funding at this time. Seeing no further public comment or direction on this, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 With all members voting, so we will move forward. Ms. Jager, are you ready to present now? Okay.
Yes, we're good now.
All right. So we're going to jump back to E1. This is public hearing regarding the approval of Resolution 595, adopting the budget augmentation for the Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority. Ms. Jager, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the entire board for being patient. Thanks to Rick O'Neill and IT for addressing the issue that we had. So we're good to go now. As you're aware, the purpose of this agenda item is to present the details of a proposed budget augmentation for your approval. Per Nevada revised statutes, our budget is required to be augmented before the end of the fiscal year if actual expenditures are anticipated to exceed the originally budgeted expenditures. We are proposing an augmentation today because Q1 revenues in total exceeded budget by over $2 million. We'll go into more detail later in the presentation, but this was driven by room taxes exceeding budget, slightly offset by facility revenues coming in under budget. And I wanted to let the board know that this budget augmentation does not include the 2 recent grant awards. We do not have the necessary documentation to include the amounts from Travel Nevada in our budget. There are agreements that need to be in place before we can officially do that. Per recent conversations that I've had with Travel Nevada, those agreements will be coming soon. And while it is not the funding that we were awarded through the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant for $2.8 million is also not yet available to spend due to the administrative requirements of the grant, but we are expecting to present a spending plan for both of those within the next few months. And lastly, this budget augmentation was presented to the Finance and Facilities Committee on November 3rd and was approved, but approval by that committee is advisory only, so the augmentation will not be effective until approval is received by the board today. I'll go ahead and structure today's presentation as follows. We'll talk about Q1 revenues in detail, focusing on room tax revenues and facility revenues. We'll talk about the detail of the proposed expenses in the budget augmentation, which is broken down into the 3 functional categories of convention and tourism promotion, general government, and facility expenses. This is an overview of Q1 revenues, budget versus actual. Room taxes overall performed really well and were over $2.7 million over budget, slightly offset by facility revenues that were nearly $700,000 under budget. The smaller categories of interest and other revenues didn't have significant differences, and those don't make up a large portion of our budget. Here we have breakdowns by month for room tax revenue. In terms of total taxable room revenues, we set records during the first quarter. Total taxable room revenues in July were the highest ever recorded for a month. August was the 3rd highest month ever, and September actually came in 1.6% higher than 2019, which was notable given the fires that were occurring during that time. The increases in total taxable room revenues are being driven by ADR. If we compare fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 2019, which was the last full year pre-pandemic, you'll see that ADR is up 21%, but occupied rooms and occupancy percentages are down, however. Here we have the breakdown of total taxable room revenue by market segment. In terms of percentage growth, vacation rentals are performing really well. They're up over 50% pre-pandemic. Many of the smaller segments like motels and RV parks are doing well too, and hotels are up 6.7%. The next most significant portion of our revenues are facility revenues. The 3 categories of facility revenues are facility rentals, concessions and catering, and other revenues. Regarding facility rental revenue, it's no secret that events and conventions travel has been slower to come back than leisure travel. Rental revenues are down due to less events than anticipated and discounts given to get events in the door. Concessions and catering makes up most of the budget to actual difference for facility revenues. Contractually, ASM has been tasked with creating their budget for the facilities. You'll remember that this year's budget was created and presented to you by the interim general manager at the time, Dante Nicastro. He presented the budget to the board back in May. He chose to go with forecasts in this area that were very optimistic in terms of revenues by event and in total. During the budget development process, I had several meetings with him to get him to bring down those estimates as much as possible, but we're finding that he still ended up in a number that is just too aggressive. I've had detailed financial meetings with ASM regarding this. They're working with him now in his role as food and beverage director to update those forecasts and work on a strategy regarding those revenues. The other revenues line items consist of items like parking, internet, and other items that correlate directly with events that are held. We'll go into more detail later in the presentation, but the facility loss is over budget, which again is completely driven by underperforming revenues. Expenses have been managed within budget for Q1. We'll discuss more later, but it's important to get a full picture of what the facility loss currently looks like. So we've reviewed revenues in detail, so now we're going to talk about how we're proposing to spend that money. This is the detail of our proposed budget augmentation. The majority of spending will occur in sales, with marketing being the second highest category. Next is finance and general and administrative spending, and we're also proposing adding $150,000 in expenses to the facilities budget. Lastly, we have a small portion of the money that will go towards reserves. Next, we'll review the spending plan for each department. Given the time constraints of the meeting, we'll review this at more of a summary level, but if you'd like any additional detail in any area, please let me know. So sales in total will be getting an additional $800,000 to be spent on key priorities that were identified. The top priority that was identified was reestablishing booking incentives. The purpose of these booking incentives is to help bring in business and also has the potential to positively impact facility revenues. The booking incentives are almost half of this total at $400,000. Next are in-market events. There are 7 additional in-market events being planned. Again, this is work being performed to drive additional business. Sales will also be hiring 2 additional FTEs to support the department post-pandemic. And we've added amounts for travel and entertainment that will support department initiatives and address inflation trends. We have smaller expenses as well for the Customer Advisory Board and other initiatives. We're proposing adding an additional $636,000 to support initiatives in the marketing department. We recently had the ability to refresh our imagery and hold our first campaign shoot since 2018 for the Recharge campaign. This generated a new image library to be used for several years. Additionally, pandemic discounts have ended for certain professional services, so those services will go up to the amounts previously approved by the board. Marketing will be hiring 2 additional FTEs to support the department post-pandemic, and we're also focusing on targeted initiatives for meetings and conventions. Additionally, we have certain graphic design projects and other smaller expenses that will make up this line item. Next, we have finance and general and administrative. This is around $375,000 and only makes up about 18% of the total augmentation. Approximately 80% of this item is related to the transition of the facilities. While the transition plan is still being finalized, we know that bringing in the facilities in-house will create a significant additional workload for critical administrative areas. This will also support the organization post-pandemic. During the current fiscal year, we'll need to increase our general and administrative support in areas like human resources to support the additional FTEs, as well as functions like accounting and IT. We need to recruit and hire for those positions prior to June 1st to ensure that we hit the ground running and have employees properly trained. We'll also hire staff specific to the facilities prior to June 1st to assist with a smooth transition. This transition will also create additional IT needs in areas like equipment and licenses, and other smaller portions of this augmentation include IT consulting needs due to the recent turnover in the department and finalizing our health insurance renewal, which will be presented as the next agenda item. So as I previously mentioned, facility expenses in total are under budget. However, through meeting with ASM management, we have identified a key priority that should be addressed in this augmentation. Repairs and maintenance are currently running 30 to 35% over budget. This is due to catching up on prior year maintenance issues. Prior management at ASM did not make certain repairs and maintenance items a priority, so we've had long-standing issues that are being addressed as appropriate this year, but the budget created by the interim general manager at the time did not account for this. We want to continue to address those prior year repairs. We don't want to get behind again, especially since we'll have our hands full with the transition. So on the right of this slide, you'll also see the revised facility loss figure. You'll remember that the facility loss was originally budgeted at $3.7 million, close to $3.8 million. When accounting for revenues being under budget and the expenses that we're adding, the new loss figure is looking closer to $4.5 million. After that, all that, we'll have $83,000 left over that will go towards reserves. As you're aware, there are board policies in place regarding minimum fund balance so that we don't spend every dollar that comes in the door and we secure the financial stability and longevity of the organization. So one last discussion about facility expenses. During those detailed financial meetings that I've had with ASM, we've also discussed that utilities are running about 60% over budget. I've worked with ASM to investigate the cause of this, and it's just due to low estimates again from the previous general manager, as well as higher temperatures than anticipated in Q1. Renee McGinnis, the current general manager at ASM, has done a great job of managing this budget. She's managed the utility overages through adjusting other areas of the budget like salaries and benefits, but we are keeping an eye on this line item. With that, I will go ahead and open it up for questions.
Jager, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Jager in regards to the budget augmentation?
This is Shannon Keel. Everything looks good. Thank you, Courtney. Can we get a breakout of the loss of the facilities by each facility?
Yeah, I can certainly prepare that and send that to the board directly after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying. I mean, I hate to point out something that's obvious, but a lot of the loss is because of COVID and, you know, all the nation isn't seeing events like they were before. But we weren't making money in this area before COVID either. And can you imagine if we had $5 million additional dollars for sales and marketing and events and all these other things? So I just want to highlight how important it is that we get our arms around this and figure out a permanent plan for this problem that's been around for many, many years.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Sturman.
Yes, so thank you, Courtney. That was a very good presentation. Just wanted to point out to the group that I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions. As the Finance Committee, myself, Member Bybee and Chapman and Rick spent a long time with the group, really digging into a lot of the weeds. And I think it's pretty straightforward augmentation. When the original budget was presented, it could have been a little conservative based on not knowing if there was going to be further restrictions due to COVID. With that not happening, I think it's a very straightforward augmentation, and I would certainly move to approve as presented.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sturman. So I have more discussion. So I have a motion, but I have more discussion with members of private.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a second from Mr. Chapman. Further discussion, members of private.
Just a quick question, I guess, for Charles, or I don't know, Courtney. On the staff, because we're bringing it in-house, and I'm glad to see the CEO and staff being proactive on this. Do we have the right, and we just went through this at the airport, do you anticipate any problems, and I know gaming as well, having a hard time getting people, as far as I saw the positions in this augmentation, do we have enough funding set aside to attract these positions? And when do you anticipate going out to with HR to put these positions out on the street?
Yeah, so Jessica, let me just kind of talk about that. What we're talking about now is helping the staff recover to the pre-COVID levels. What we've been operating with right now is 69% of staff to pre-COVID levels. These 4 positions, backfilling the director of marketing, which we already have, but 3 additional positions, 2 for our sales team that really needs that support to help drive the sales. It's a services division that the sales folks have talked to me a lot about. That money is within it, as well as 1 marketing position that will serve to not only help on the special event side, but will also serve to support the marketing for the meetings and convention side. Those job descriptions are already written. If this is passed as is, that has been suggested by Mr. Sturbins, we start going and searching on Monday morning for those folks. So
Great.
We're ready. We're armed. It's a little different than the ASM folks. This is specifically to get our team back closer to where we need. This will get us close to about 80%. And again, we'll meet on a quarterly basis for that funding. And if we have more funds, then we will most likely come back and ask that to have more staff rejoin to get us closer to where we were before.
And then on those positions, and again, I wasn't here when the layoffs happened. Are we going back to the folks that were here? Is that a possibility? They've probably moved on by now, but is there any chance to rehire what we had, or are they getting first?
Well, just so you know, we've already rehired some folks that
Okay.
were furloughed in the past. So that has happened. We open it to everybody, right? And if folks
Great.
are still in the market, we will interview and consider anybody and everyone as it fits with the position's needs.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any further discussion by any of the members? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Sturbin, second by Mr. Chapman to approve the augmentation as posted. Madam Clerk, this is a public hearing. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment on this item at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all members voting for the augmentation. Thank you very much. Ms. Jager, do you want to take us into employee benefits? Item E2, please.
Sounds great. So hello again, Courtney Jager, Vice President of Finance. Today, we're here to present the employee benefit plan renewals for calendar year 2022. As you're aware, the RSCVA provides insurance benefits to our employees, including medical, dental, vision, life insurance, short and long-term disability, and a health savings account. We also provide insurance benefits to qualifying retirees. This year was a difficult year for our insurance renewals. We have several factors working against us. The most significant factor is that our population for health insurance coverage includes more retirees than active employees. This is not industry standard. This prevented certain carriers from providing quotes for coverage towards us. And another issue we ran into was that our medical loss ratio was not favorable this year. This basically means that the amounts that we paid for premiums were less than the benefits that the population of those insured received. We have no control over this figure, but in prior years, we had a very favorable loss ratio, and this year it was unfavorable. For our medical insurance provider, who you're voting to approve today, we're recommending United Healthcare. We've been with UHC since 2018. We've been very grateful that they've stuck with us, even though our active employee to retiree employee ratio was not favorable. This year, they allowed us to negotiate within the large group space, even though we have under 50 active employees. We anticipated an increase of about 15% in medical premiums this year, but the quote came in at a 29% increase. However, this is just a temporary solution. Given that we're taking the facilities back in-house, we will be renegotiating our insurance coverage in a few months, and we plan to bring a revised insurance proposal to the board for approval around June of next year. We expect that the next insurance renewal will be in our favor, since we'll be able to market to carriers within the large group space. So we're asking for your approval today so our employees and retirees can maintain insurance coverage during this interim period before we renegotiate as a larger organization. And today we have Kevin Monahan with LP Insurance. He's here to present the details of our renewal.
Monahan.
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. Excuse me, Kevin Monahan with LP Insurance, everybody. Good afternoon. I was going to try to share my screen here. Looks like I'm disabled.
I can share it for you, Kevin.
Okay. So if you would just take to the summary page, please, Courtney. Yep. So this is the summary that corresponds with management's recommendation. Excuse me. Obviously, the medical here is the biggest piece of this thing, and that ties back to some of the issues that Courtney pointed out, which are outlined here on the next page. And you did a good job summarizing everything, Courtney, so I'll be re-emphasizing some of that, and then talking a little bit more about the plan. But if you could advance that. So this just puts, I guess, some of the numbers behind what was stated, and that's, you know, whenever an insurance company is paying more in claims than they're collecting in premiums, it's sort of a bad situation. You can see the difference here. Put the numbers to it. It was significant. It's about 127% loss ratio, or difference between the two. The other thing that's a little striking is this active retiree or active employee versus retiree ratio. Not only it's an interesting scenario when you're in the public sector space and retirees are involved, because under NRS they're required to at least have the option to stay on the last public employer's plan. So this is, even if it had to really or wanted to, this would be a decision that RSCVA really wouldn't be able to make per NRS. So it's this reality that's there. The market, the insurance market itself doesn't like retirees, right? It's a costly proposition. Those that do cover them in the segments that they do have a ceiling typically of 20%. and that's when they're offered. So you can see we're over 100% with retirees, and a lot of this stems, by the way, for the decision several years ago when ASM was brought aboard, because a lot of what were active employees at that time became covered retirees, and the active employee population obviously dwindled at the same time. So this issue's been on the radar for a number of years. There's been a number of proactive measures taken already to try to reduce the retiree population. Believe it or not, that 39 is a pretty big improvement for where it was a couple of years ago. There's a number of measures the leadership and management at RSCVA has taken along with our team to address the retirees, offering them subsidies to buy Medicare, buyout options on their retiree benefits and those things. So that's been successful, but it's still, as you can see, we need something more successful. So in spite of this tough renewal, the fact that the ASM employees are coming back and that active employee population is going to increase is good news. That's going to put RSCVA back into the quote unquote large group market segment. And that's a market segment where retirees are eligible for coverage. And there's more flexibility. Now, they could still become an issue, at some point, but we're at least in a market segment when RSCVA is large again, where there are carriers that have it within their guidelines to cover retirees, and we can negotiate. And to Courtney's point, too, United Healthcare did a nice favor this year in allowing RSCVA to remain in the large group segment despite being only 38 active employees. So they exhibited some good partnership, I think, this year for RSCVA on that front. Unfortunately, it came along with the increase that was driven by the claims. Outside of the traditional large group and small group market segments, you have what are called association health plans. And the rules in those are typically different. Probably the most notable of those are the Reno Sparks Chamber Plan, which has been a very successful plan, association health plan. That was looked at very closely. We tried very hard to get RSCVA into that program. The best that they were able to do is what you can see here from the pricing standpoint. And the retirees were an issue there as well, just to be perfectly clear. So this is just a little bit of history. I don't know that the history itself is as important, other than saying, which is really good, as you know, with health insurance, and 9% last year, and then of course we're catching a lot of that up this year in the 29. But equally important, or perhaps more important, I think, is the forward-looking aspect of this, which is the ASM employees are rehired. RSCVA is a new, quote-unquote, new organization in terms of the underwriting and the underwriting processes for the health insurance companies, which will hopefully make a better picture mid-year this year, which is, as Courtney stated, the plan. So the recommendation, I'll just state it again, and Courtney, if I mess anything up here, let me know, but it's to accept all of the renewal actions that were noted. The biggest one of those, of course, is the United Healthcare renewal, and then be ready to get to work here very soon on the solution, the mid-year solution with the ASM employees.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Monahan. Ms. Yeager, is there anything further that you would need to add to this item?
Nothing further to add to this item, so we can open it up for questions or for a motion.
All right. Councilwoman Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have just one question. Maybe, I don't know if Kevin or Courtney want to answer this, because obviously I've just been a year on this board. On the retiree, do we, per NRS statute, just have to give them the option to remain on the insurance and they pay the premiums, or does RSCVA, are they obligated to pay for retiree medical benefits?
So I can take that, or at least as a starting point. So NRS requires that they are allowed to remain on the plan, but does not require a subsidy or a contribution from the employer. However, with speaking specifically to RSCVA, per the different policies over the year and the agreements, they have guaranteed historically. Now, this I don't believe it's the case any longer, but historically, there were agreements made with the now retirees that this benefit, this subsidy, which again is not required under NRS, but they made the commitment, and they're still basically the current situation is a result of those past agreements.
So the retirees under those agreements, RSCVA pays the premiums like they do for active employees.
Portions dependent on their years of service and the year they retired with the organization.
Okay, because that's, I've worked for companies, including American Airlines, who dropped our retiree medical benefits years ago. Very expensive proposition for the organization. And obviously, for all of us who are old, we're a liability to the cost of insurance. So, but that answers my question, and that would make sense that obviously, if we still we're carrying that financial burden, having more active employees that, an ability to go to stay in a large group makes sense. So thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Member Soprano, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess clarification question for Kevin. Was Prominence involved in any of these discussions for this agenda item? I represent them, so if they were, I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself from voting. So.
Yeah, no, they weren't. They were not.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the members? Mr. Jaeger, I have a quick question for you in regards to what year was it that for new employees, we terminated the ongoing employee benefits program?
So after 2012, new employees no longer receive a health benefit subsidy. And after 2017, any new retiree only receives a subsidy up to age 65. So the most significant changes were in 2012 when we stopped providing the subsidy, and in 2017 when we limited the age.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. All right. Any further questions on this item? Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the new employee benefits plan for January 2022.
Ann Silver, motion to approve the new employee benefit plan as outlined by Courtney Yeager.
All right, I have a motion from Member Silver. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
A second from Councilman Bybee. Seeing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
There's no public comment on this item.
All right, seeing no public comment. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all members voting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to, thank you for your attendance today. It takes us to our final items of the agenda. Board member comments regarding any items for the future meetings. Do we have any comments for future meetings?
Just one, Mr. Chair, we're having the augmentation portion is coming back in December, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Chairman Lucy?
Yes.
Can we just get some updates on, I know we were in talks with hockey and some other events and updates on bowling and things that we sort of have irons in the fire so we all know where we're at?
Yes, absolutely. I've spoken with the CEO in regards to that, and he is prepared to bring us an update and presentation, not in December, but I believe in January. Is that correct, Mr. Harris?
Yes, sir. In January it is.
Sales and marketing will both have an
Perfect.
update available for us in January.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything further? All right. Seeing nothing further, I'll close for item F. We'll go to item G. This is public comment from the floor. Madam Clerk, is there any final public comment?
No final public comment.
I don't hear anything from chambers.
No more public
All right.
comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. This meeting is adjourned, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody. The next board meeting will take place on December 9th. Hope to see you then.
Goodbye.